All right. Let's pick up where we left off. Part 2 of our DFS research station for NHL. We were comparing these in DK averages or FD averages, whichever site you want to use, to each other, showing you how you can sort of predict the moving averages, use them with each other in terms of 10 games and 5 game sample sizes, who's running hot, who's running cold. What does that maybe mean in terms of salary and whether the guy is a value or whether not, whether he's overpriced. So basically, once we've got to that point, we've got a ton of stuff that we can sort through. I can show you a couple of other techniques that I like to use after I get to the consistency tool here. I'll just use a DraftKings one. This consistency rating means how often does a skater hit these numbers. So if I sort by, say, 15 points, if I'm playing tiers, I love this tool because it helps me determine who I should be keying on in a particular tier. I compare, the skaters to one another, and whichever one hits a certain, higher number more consistently, I'm going to lean on him. Austin Matthews hits 20 points 35% of the time. In the classic formats, that makes a bunch of it's very important because you have to see price and salary and all of that. Does he need to hit 20 points to bring value? I mean, if a guy that's $3,000 hits 20 points, he smashes value. But if Austin Matthews at 9,200 hits 20 points, he kind of barely brings value. So these things do matter in the classic format for sure. But in tiers, I can really pick these guys apart, and I don't care about the price. I only care about how you're going to produce, right? So, and I've noticed in tiers, 15 to 20 points, if you get 15 to 20 out of each player in your tier, you're typically going to win, or be in the running for any format that you play. If you get a few guys with higher than that burst out, that's great. They can make up for guys that only score 5 to 10 points. 10 points is a little bit low, but when we talk about the classic stuff, we're looking more for 10 points for like a $3,300 guy and 20 points for an $8,000 guy or whatever. There is no 5X or 6X like NBA. In hockey, I'm sure there is a number, but hockey, the range of outcomes is just so huge that, these are just arbitrary numbers, arbitrary targets that we're kind of picking out, and we're kind of just saying, if you get it's like in the weather, when you see the average high for today is 52 degrees. How often does it hit 52? Like never. It's somewhere between 32 and 72, right? That's what a projection is, and that's honestly what some of these things are telling you as well, value metrics and whatever else. It's just kind of a median projection that the range. Now, and a sport like NBA would be like San Diego weather, where I have a high of 60 today, and my channel is pretty much, if it's below 50, we're setting records and talking about how cold it is, and if it's above 70, we're setting records talking about how hot it is. But in a sport like hockey or golf or baseball, that 60 degrees for San Diego might as well be in Denver, Colorado, because at 60 degrees, we can still get down to 25, or we can get all the way up to 85. And that makes a big, big difference in the volatility of the sport when you're talking about 8, 9, 10 players per lineup, where you're really trying to get all of them to be at the top end of their range. They're just not going to do it. And the wider the range is, the more likelihood you're going to find a dud in there or whatever. The consistency tool helps you curb that a little bit and find the guys that have that tighter channel of production. They tend to fall into those points. Some guys can't reach 20 and 25 points. If I scroll way down here to the bottom of the list, I've already got guys that in their last 20 games haven't done it but once, if at all. These are guys that just have low ceilings. Now, if they're cheap in classic form, that's great. But in tiers, they have low ceilings. I'm looking for guys that hit these numbers consistently, the 10, 15, and 20 mark. And then I want to compare it to who does it over 10 games, over 5 games, whatever. I can really see who's hot right now, and that's DeBrincat. Because see how he's 40% of the time he's going out, 20% of the time, 25 plus, 40% of the time over the last 5 games. Well, being that this is 20% and this is 40%, I know that it's in the last 5 games are both those numbers. This was a 0 5 games, 6 games ago. Okay? So I know that he's hot, and he's hot right now. That may or may not make up my mind as to whether or not I want to use him tonight. I see numbers like this 40% and say Cam Atkinson is cold, cold, cold. Yes, his numbers look pretty good for 20-game sample size, but over a 5-game sample size, I can tell he's dropped off the face of a cliff. Okay? That's how we use these numbers, again, in conjunction with each other, whether we're looking for point production and we're looking for value and salary and stuff over the last 10, last 5 games like I was showing you before in DK points, or whether we're looking at these consistency ratings for should I use this guy in cash or not. If I'm using the guy in cash, I want very, very high consistency rankings here. If I'm using a guy in a tournament, I don't mind this number so much. I want this number. I want these numbers to be high. Does that make sense? That's all I'm trying to do with these numbers. And they, again, really, really help you in the tiers format. If I jump over to the stack finders, this is just another tab, shows me all of the lines, shows me over the course of the scoring line, Toronto, shows me their scoring over the last 5 games, shows me their implied scoring chances, shows me their average value so I can find cheaper line ones down here. I mean, Detroit, nobody's stacking Detroit, right? But if you did, you're going to get a little bit more value and production out of them than you might out of Toronto. It's just that Toronto's a better offense, right? So we're going to stay there more often than not. And you can find this line 2, defensive pairing, line whatever. You can come all the way over here to line 3 and line 4 and take a look at it. You can find Toronto's line 3 over the last 5 games is outproducing line 1. And line 2 is actually the line to be on top of right now. So that's kind of interesting because in a tournament build or even in a cash build, that gives you a little bit better chance. First of all, you'd be a little bit different than everybody else because they'll be focused on Matthews in line 1, and you can drop all the way down to line 3 and pick up Hyman and some of those other guys that are actually producing for cheaper. And then you can go to a bigger line 1 stack, like if you liked Boston tonight or something like that. You can see that line 1 at 37 points and line 2 at 10 points. I mean, obviously all the scoring's coming out of Boston's line 1. That's how you can mix and match and use this tool to help you out. You can expand and open these guys up, and you can take a look at which guys are on which lines, their names, and what they're producing. And you can pick, like I wouldn't pick the guy who hadn't scored any goals at all. I'd be taking this guy here, you know, and those are just the kinds of things that I'm looking for. And when I've got the time to dig in and research and really get into the slate, I can do that with the power play as well, with this power play tab. And I can start looking at what power plays are really cranking and what power plays are not. Is it the first unit or the second unit? You would find that Winnipeg, wherever they are, typically first line is just okay. The second line can outproduce that first power play line. A sneaky stack is usually Winnipeg 2 because this number is oftentimes higher than line 1. Vegas is another team that the power play 2 can outperform the power play 1. And that's sexy stuff when you can get a piece of it because, you get a little bit different in tournaments. You're just being a little bit smarter by playing the odds in a little bit different direction at lower ownership. And then when it goes off, you look like a genius. So briefly stated, that's what this tool can do for you. I mean, you can go through the tiers tabs on your own too, and you can expand and you dig into these numbers as deep as you want to go. But what I want to show you with the last couple of minutes here of this video is what's coming. Because this is kind of fun to use with the research station. I don't know what we're going to call it. I don't know what we're going to do. It just got presented to me basically today. And, hey, what do you think about this? Do you like this tool? And I do. This tool, and I'll get to that page in a second, but this tool puts it all on a page for you. And these, if you make a copy or whatever, when you gain access to it, these will be sortable for you when you look at your own copy of it, whatever. But what I'm looking at here is teams, opponents, salaries, salary difference, which I don't use a bunch, last 5 versus DraftKings scoring, season average. What that tells me is that David Pastrnak is 3.5 points per game under his season average over his last 5 games. His season average is 20.93. His last 5-game DraftKings average should be bigger than that. Oh, I was looking at the FanDuel one. These probably need to flip-flop. But the DraftKings average of 17.89 and the last 5 games of 14.4 tells me he's running under his average. And I can go looking for who's hot and who's not. The big positive numbers are in a good spot. The big negatives are kind of cooled off. So if I looked for, Austin Matthews down here at Toronto, who a lot of people are going to be keying on this slate tonight, I come down here and I look, where's my buddy Austin Matthews? 8 points under, 10 points under on FanDuel. All that tells me is that he's running a little bit underneath. And as salaries trail production, that means that at $9,200, he's not producing like a $9,200 player, therefore he's overpriced. To me, he's more of a GPP play. Now, if I'm playing in a very, very small 50-50, I I kind of have to use him. If I'm running volume head-to-heads, 10, 15, 20, 30 head-to-heads out there tonight, I have to use him. He's just going to be in too many lineups, and he's more of a block than anything else because so many people are going to key on him. But in GPPs, I can fade the hell out of him. And I'm banking on the fact that he isn't going to produce like he normally does. And if he doesn't smash, I win. Because I'm taking gambles, smarter gambles, in other places on the slate tonight, and I'm not burning $9,200 there where it's not likely to produce. Okay? Again, this is how you use these tools and use these things. One thing I can do, if it's sorted by team right now, if I could get it sorted differently, I would go down here and I would look for guys that are out of place. Like if I sorted by season average and I started at the bottom, and these guys are all scoring 5, 6, 7 points, and then all of a sudden I see an 11 down here with the 5, 6, and the 7s. I scroll over here and I would see, oh, Victor Olofsson. If Victor Olofsson, and this is, like I said, this is by the team, not by the points. But if this was by the points, I would come over here and see this out-of-place production on the high side, and then I would look at who it's around salary-wise, and I can sometimes find a $3,000 guy in there with $5,000 players. That's value. That's a guy that's $2,000 cheaper, but he's playing just like them or better. That's a guy you want to use as your value piece. And this is a quick way to find it. If I was a little bit more prepared, I would have made a copy, I would sort, and I would whatever and show you this tool. But as it's set up by teams, it gets a little bit more cumbersome to find some of the stuff. You can scroll down here and you can start finding, Sam Reinert's running hot. I'm looking at the green numbers, right? And I can see these guys, Dougie Hamilton and Trocheck, are running wicked hot on FanDuel, but not so much on DraftKings. That helps me. I'd use them on FanDuel more than I would use them on DraftKings. But if I look down here, 4.5 above his average, his last 10 DraftKings games over his season, he's running about 4 or 5 points above. That's good for Carl Soderberg. Maybe he's a value play tonight on DraftKings. If I'm looking at the last 5 numbers, I look at Alex DeBrincat, who's white hot right now. He's running way over his season-long DraftKings average over the last 5 games. So maybe that tips the cap. What that tells me is he's likely to be underpriced at $8,000 even. Now, it doesn't make any sense. You wouldn't think he is, but by this production, he is, because his price is going to keep coming up and keep coming up. Okay? So I can scroll these columns and look for these things. But also, this little tab here is pretty sexy. This top 10 tab. Now you've got all your cold guys and all your hot guys right there in front of your face. And Austin Matthews, the subject of this 2-part tutorial, has been stated multiple times. He's running cold, and here it is right in front of you. Doesn't mean he won't smash tonight. It just means that based on what we've seen recently out of Austin Matthews, he's probably a little overpriced. You'd be better off getting more bang for your buck somewhere else. Again, you still have to make up your mind as to whether or not you'd use him in a cash game, depending on his ownership, depending on how safe you want to play things, or whatever. But in a tournament, I'm not saying he's a full fade. He might smash tonight. But if you're looking for a reason to maybe get off of him, that's a good reason right there. And if you're looking at the hot guys, you look at Palat. I don't know. I've never heard of this guy before. Eli Tolvanen or whatever. I've never heard of the guy before. This is the first I've ever seen of this guy. He's flying completely under the radar, and he's scoring 10 DraftKings points in his last 5, 10 on the average at $3,400. Humongous value. I would want to see if he's on a power play unit or something. If not, he probably should be the way he's scoring. Yanni Gourde, another Tampa guy. You want to look and see if those guys are correlated. Gourde and Palat. If they are correlated, you've got a sneaky correlated pair that is bringing value that is probably underpriced for the production they've been giving you over the last 5 games. They're probably a good little twofer to throw in your lineups. Yes, there are some Detroit guys on this list, believe it or not, and Florida guys and whatever else. You're usually going to find your cheaper hot streak guys here, but sometimes you will find hot streak last 10. Matthews has fallen completely off of this list because he's now on this list, but he was on this list. So it just tells you it's just the last 3 or 4 games. It could be a short cold streak. It could turn right around and come back. But if it lasts a little while, at least you were warned and you were able to make adjustments, okay? Kyle Connor, hot streak last 10 games. He ain't on this list. He's fallen off too. Barkov, same thing. These are names that I use in a lot of cash game lineups. Matthews, Connor, Barkov, Kane. I use these guys in a lot of cases because they're very steady players usually. But when they go on a little bit of cold streaks, I get off of them for a week and then come and revisit the tool later. And when I got a tool like this that shows me what I'm looking for, it makes it very easy for me to get off of Patrice Bergerons, to stay off of Svechnikovs, and get on Pilots and get on some of these other guys, DeBrinkets, that are scoring really, really well. Hopefully that helps you guys get an idea of how to use that tool, and then this tool coming out, and hopefully it makes you a better player. Take care, guys. We'll talk to you soon.